Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, I've got 8 chilling encounters pulled from deep November in the Appalachian backwoods. Stories where the frost comes early, the trails vanish behind you, and something in the dark knows your name before you ever speak it. These aren't ghost stories. Not really. They're what's left behind when the map runs out and the woods start remembering. But before we continue, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to like and share. Thank you all. Now then, let's begin. I should have known better than to go back alone. The plan had seemed so simple in my head, 3 quiet days before the freeze. Just me and Murphy, a few miles into the Pisgah woods. I left Asheville before sunrise, my gear packed tight, the trail map folded to the same page I'd marked as a kid. The kind of cold that settles in your fingertips had already crept in, turning the dirt brittle and the underbrush stiff with frost. Murphy, my old shepherd, kept pace beside me like always. 14 now, grizzled and slow, but still sharp when it counted. His ears flicked every time a crow called out above us. But he didn't seem spooked, just alert. That dog's been with me through breakups, deadlines, hospital calls, and now, after Mom passed, he was the only heartbeat I trusted. The hike took longer than it used to. The trailhead was half swallowed in moss, and the markers were faded to pale slashes of paint. But when the cabin came into view, tucked between 2 slope-bowed hemlocks, roof still intact, I felt something like relief. It looked smaller than I remembered. Older, too. Like time had been passing differently out here. The door was stiff but opened. Inside, it smelled of dry rot and pine needles. Same old stone hearth, same slatted cot, and carved into the wood just above the latch, clear as anything, were the words, Claire, 2001. I stood there a while, staring at it. I hadn't been out here since I was 9, and I knew we'd never carved anything. I even remembered asking Mom once, asking if I could scratch my name into a tree with my camping knife, and her saying, "Don't leave marks in these woods. They remember more than we do." I don't frest, was effort cozy. Maybe I forgot. Maybe Mom let me once, and it slipped away. But no, I remember wanting to. I remember the want, and I remember her face, stern and quiet in the firelight, telling me no. We stayed the night. Murphy circled 3 times and collapsed beside the door like he'd claimed the post. I lit the camp lantern and made instant soup, sat on the edge of the cot, trying not to read too much into that carved name. Maybe someone else named Claire came through here. It was possible. But the year 2001 matched exactly. Morning broke soft and silver. Thin light filtered through the warped window pane, and I could see frost feathering the ground outside. Murphy didn't bark, but he kept glancing toward the rear wall like he'd heard something in the night. I stepped out to get firewood and noticed something new, a fresh carving, lower on the outer wall, rougher than the first. Claire, 2023. I just stared at it. I hadn't touched my knife since I packed it. When I checked the blade, it was clean, still folded tight. For a minute, I stood there trying to think of a reason. Had I sleepwalked? Was someone else nearby? But the trail was empty. The frost was unbroken. That night, it got colder. I pulled my coat around me and tucked the blanket over Murphy. The lantern burned low. Around 1 in the morning, I heard it, soft scratching, like claws raking across bark. It was coming from behind the cabin. Murphy lifted his head but didn't move, just growled low, steady, like something was right on the other side of the wall. I held still, listening. The sound came and went, soft, then gone. A minute later, it started again. But when I stepped outside with the flashlight, there was nothing there. In the morning, I checked the back wall. One of the planks was scraped, clawed, like something big had tried to dig through. Bark and splinters littered the ground. A faint print marked the dirt just outside. Muddy, oblong, too wide for a coyote, too narrow for a bear, and it didn't match Murphy's paw. I set up my motion sensor camera, half embarrassed that I even brought it. But it felt right. I strapped it to a birch tree behind the cabin, angled it toward the wall. If something came back, I'd see it. I didn't sleep well the next night. Murphy paced for a while, then settled again by the door. I left the flashlight within reach. The woods were quiet, almost too quiet, like the birds and insects had called it a night early. Somewhere past midnight, Murphy whined. Not loud, just once. A short, breathy sound. But he didn't move, didn't bark. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside, breath blooming in the cold air. The woods were still. I circled behind the cabin, where the frost clung to the grass in thick curls. One plank near the base wall was loose, not broken, but angled outward like it had been pried open. I knelt, breath caught in my throat, shined the beam into the narrow gap, and I saw something curled inside the crawl space, back turned to me. Same coat color as mine, same fold at the collar. On the wrist, a watch. My watch. My voice caught. The thing twitched. Then the plank snapped back. Hard. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't wait. I shoved the door closed behind me and Murphy exploded into barking. Tail low. Legs stiff. He backed toward me as I reached for my pack. Heart hammering hard enough, I could taste it in my throat. My coat was still on. My watch was still on. I checked both twice. I even looked at the stitching in the collar just to be sure. It was mine. Then, what the hell had I seen under there? I grabbed my phone, opened the camera feed. The motion sensor should have triggered. It was pointed straight at the wall. But all it showed was static. A soft hiss. No image. I replayed the clip 3 times. Same thing every time. By first light, I had packed. Murphy stayed glued to my heels, not bounding ahead like usual. The trail felt colder now. Not just in temperature, in silence, in how the frost didn't melt, even as the sun came up. I turned off the main path and cut across a dry creek bed, heading deeper. I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted distance from the cabin. But half an hour later, I saw it, an old wood marker stuck between 2 rocks, weathered almost smooth, but still visible. CTSSC, Nov 2023. That's me, Claire Thomas. But I didn't carve it. The frost broke late that morning. I came out into a wide clearing where the sun finally touched the earth again. Steam lifted from the ferns. I heard voices, a family hiking down from the ridge, 2 kids laughing, the father waving politely. I nodded, didn't speak. For a moment, it felt like I could exhale again. My phone buzzed. 1 bar of signal. I opened a text, marked it unread, and slid the phone away. I didn't want to explain anything yet. Instead, I set up camp by a newer trailhead, a few miles from the cabin, pitched the tent beneath a cluster of birch trees. Murphy curled up right away. No growling, no tension, just rest. I boiled water, made oatmeal, and watched the fog thin out above us. For a little while, it felt almost normal again. But I didn't sleep. Not really. Sometime after midnight, I heard it again, the scratching. Not from behind me. Not from the trees. From under the tent, Murphy growled. Deep, steady, unmoving. I held the zipper and listened. Not loud, not wild. Just the soft scrape of something trying to remember its way up through dirt. I unzipped the flap and shined my light. The grass was still, but under the tarp, pressed flat beneath my gear, was something wooden. I reached down and brushed dirt away. A narrow slat. Same wood as the cabin siding. It had my name on it. Claire. The year was scratched over, gouged into splinters. I started digging, just a few inches down. The soil was cold but loose. My fingers struck plastic, a Ziploc bag, clouded with time. I opened it. Inside was a photo. Me and Mom, sitting on that cabin step, firewood in the background. I had that picture at home. That exact one. But in this version, my eyes were closed. Mom's hand was on my shoulder, and her mouth looked like it had just finished saying something. On the back of the photo, in faded pen, developed November 2023. I didn't cry. Not then. I just packed slowly, methodically, without thinking too hard. We hiked out before dawn. I didn't look back. I keep the photo in my drawer now. Murphy's still with me, slower than ever, but still watching the door when the wind picks up. I haven't been back to that part of the mountains. I don't think I ever will. But sometimes, when the heat cuts off in the middle of the night and the air goes still, I hear it. The soft creak of a plank. The sound of someone shifting under wood, like the place is still trying to remember me. And sometimes I wonder, if I'd stayed one more night, would it have gotten my name right? There's one thing you should remember if you ever retrace an old trail with someone you used to love. Everything might look the same. Except you. My name's Josh. I'm 28, living in Knoxville. I fix cars for a living. Don't really have room in my head for sentimental stuff. But somehow, there I was, heading back to an old hiking trail with Marissa, my ex. We'd been together 4 years. Broke up a little over a year ago. One of those mutual things people say to make the silence go down easier. She wanted a future with a timeline. I wasn't sure what I wanted at all. A few months back, she texted me out of nowhere. Said she just wanted to check in. And now here we were, planning a camping trip together. Like none of the hard parts ever happened. I picked Route 4A because I knew it like my own hands. Not many folks know it. Steep terrain, slick routes, old-growth trees. I used to hike it with my high school buddies, back when everything felt like a dare. Marissa had never been, and I figured it might be a good place to talk, or maybe to see what was still there. That first day, the weather was cool but clear. We talked easy, nothing forced. She brought the good instant coffee and I lugged in half a toolkit like I had something to prove. While we were setting up the tent, she laughed and said, "At least you didn't forget the tent this time." Waited, don't know second. The trail was slick in places. Wet leaves over stone, roots that felt like greased wire. Marissa slipped once coming down a bend, but I caught her by the elbow. We both laughed. I still remember the weight of her arm in my grip, both familiar and not. Around noon, I walked ahead to scout a path and saw something dangling from a low branch on the right, a red ribbon. Faded, frayed at the ends. Same kind Marissa used to tie to her backpack in college. I called her over and pointed it out. She tilted her head. "That's weird," she said. "I didn't bring any fide." "You did nowadays." I smiled. "Probably someone ahead of us." But effect way, but no one came down this trail often. We pitched camp near a big down tree with its roots yanked up like giant fingers. Just beyond that was a sloped ridge covered in leaves. It was beautiful. Sure, but too quiet. No birds. No real wind. Even though the canopy rustled like it should have been louder. Fog crept in after dark. The tent barely fit two, so we lay close. Marissa told stories from the hospital. An old man who called her by his wife's name and cried when she held his hand. I told her about a woman who gave me banana bread after I fixed her gear shift. She laughed at that. It felt easy. I didn't sleep much. Kept drifting in and out. At one point, I thought I heard someone whisper my name. So soft. I wasn't sure if it was real. I sat up, scanned the tent. Marissa was still there, turned toward the tent wall, breathing slow. I said her name. She didn't move. In the morning, I went behind the tent to look for kindling. That's when I saw the jacket. Red, folded neat over a low branch. The sleeves crossed over like someone had arranged it with care. I called out, "Hey, Marissa." She stepped out, wearing her red jacket. I pointed at the one on the branch. She looked at it and frowned. Could be an old one, she said, quiet. But it's not mine. It's in Tournicas's. I touched the fabric. It was damp. No tag. No smell I could place. That afternoon we had a small argument. Nothing dramatic. I wanted to turn back. She said we should keep going. We hadn't reached the ridge yet. I didn't want to keep arguing. So I walked ahead. Gave her space. Gave myself some, too. I'd been walking maybe 10 minutes when I heard it. Not a scream. Just a short sound. Like someone stumbling. I turned around. Couldn't see her. I called her name. No answer. Then I saw the marks. 3 skid lines in the dirt, cutting through the leaves, leading down into a narrow rocky dip tangled with roots. I followed them. Slid down half on instinct, grabbing whatever I could. I kept calling. At the bottom, nothing. No sign of her. No footprints. Just the red jacket, draped over a deep root, half soaked in mud, sleeves hanging loose, collar twisted, like someone had yanked it off fast. I shouted until my throat dried out. Her name, again and again. I slid farther into the hollow, feet losing traction, grabbing roots like rope. The mud was slick and cold, and some of the branches were sharp enough to draw blood. My hand caught a root that split open my palm. I barely noticed. I just kept going down, searching with both the flashlight and my voice. But there was no sound, no echo, no shuffle, nothing moving in return. I called again, Marissa, then softer, almost begging, come on, say something. It's not a way, with music too, still nothing. I don't know how long I stayed down there, maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer. At some point, I realized I was alone in a pit of trees and rocks that didn't want me there. The air felt tighter, thicker, like it swallowed up the noise before it could go anywhere. I climbed out, shaking. My legs were covered in mud, my hands bleeding in small cuts. I tore the tent down fast, left half our gear still packed, tried calling again. No bars. The trail marker looked unfamiliar. I felt like the trees had shifted while I was underground. There was no plan, only panic. I followed the ridgeline, thinking maybe she had doubled back. But something kept pulling me left, toward the base of the slope. That was where I found the second crevice. It looked deeper. The opening was narrow at first, then widened out into a dark mouth between the rocks. I scanned with the flashlight. The beam hit clawed earth, moss-covered stone, and something that made my chest cave in. Smears in the dirt. Drag marks. I stepped closer and saw the indentations, handprints. One of them smeared upward like she'd tried to climb. In the corner was something small and pale blue. I picked it up. A medical glove. Dried blood crusted across the palm. My heart was pounding so loud I could feel it in my teeth. I yelled her name again, louder than before. The sound bounced back, but wrong. Not the same number of syllables. Not the same shape. The flashlight flickered. I smacked it once. It steadied. I turned slowly and scanned the right wall of the crevice. And then I saw it. A trail of blood, smeared in long arcs, leading deeper into the earth. There was no safe way down. The rocks were wet and steep, and the farther in I looked, the more it curved downward, like a throat. I took a step forward, then another, but my boots slipped, and I stopped. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped. My breath echoed. I stood there until the light began to fade. The last thing I saw before backing out was the red jacket. It was lower now, caught on a jagged branch at the edge of a drop, soaked through, torn down one side like something had dragged it against stone. They called it a possible disappearance at first. 3 days of searching with dogs and drones. They found the jacket. They found the glove. That was it. People asked questions. Police, her parents, even my boss. I told the truth, and no one could prove otherwise. But I never went camping again. Never dated again either. Every fall, right when the leaves start turning, I get a small envelope in the mail. No return address. No stamp. Always hand-delivered. Inside, a single red ribbon. Same faded kind. Same frayed ends. No one ever sees who brings it. And I stop trying to explain. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. You can be deep in nature, just trees and stone and cold. But sometimes the silence feels like it's looking right at you. Not an animal. Not some hunter watching from the ridge. But the empty space between the branches, holding still, waiting. And when you feel that, you understand something no one ever says out loud. Some places watch you back. My name's Ethan Mallory. I'm 36. Spent most of the last decade running a small mechanical shop in Boone, North Carolina. When I finally sold it last fall, everyone asked me what I'd do next. I said I'd rest, clear my head, go somewhere quiet with my dog and no phone signal for a week. I brought Copper. He's 12, a retriever mixed with shepherd in him, smarter than most people I know. He's been with me since Texas, through 2 moves, 1 breakup, and a torn ACL that he walked off like it was nothing. I told myself, 1 week, just us, cold air, no news, no clients. The trail we picked wasn't on any tourist map. I remembered it from a weekend trip 10 years back. Not too steep. A few open flats for pitching a tent. By the time we set up camp, fog was already curling through the trees, and the fire took forever to catch. Copper curled up by my boots and didn't move. I sat there with a tin of beans, listening to the woods go quiet. In the morning, something was off. Copper was licking his paw, like usual. But when I scratched behind his ear, I noticed his collar was gone. I searched the tent, my pack, under the folded tarp. Nothing. The old red nylon collar, the one with the brass tag I bought in Austin, was nowhere. What I did find, an hour later, was a black leather collar in the bottom of my gear pouch. Stiff, almost too new, like it hadn't been worn. I don't remember packing it. I stared at it for a long time before buckling it around his neck. He didn't react. But I remember thinking, this doesn't feel like his. Copper didn't bark that day. Not once. Normally, he'll go off at squirrels or crows or anything that rustles. But that day he just followed, quiet, eyes scanning the woods behind me more than the trail ahead. I figured he was tired. That night, the fog got thicker. The fire struggled, and my flashlight flickered like the batteries were dying. I tied Copper's lead to a low branch while I unpacked more wood. When I turned around, he was gone. I called out, loud. No response. Just wet leaves and silence. 15 minutes later, he came back, mud up to his belly, leaves stuck to his legs. But the collar, it was different. Silver gray, same size, but duller, almost dusty. I checked my bag again. No other collars. Nothing in the emergency pouch. I even dumped the first aid kit just to be sure. Nothing that matched what he was wearing now. Copper lay down like nothing had happened. He was slower, though took more time settling. A small tremor in his front paw. I checked his legs, his back, even his mouth. No cuts, no bruises. But something about his stare made me pause, like he was thinking through something too large to tell me. The next morning, I found tracks around the tent. Not mine, not Copper's. I know his paws. They're narrow, short-stepped, with a small drag from that back leg. These were bigger, heavier, circled once, then veered off into the trees. That afternoon, I tied a little brass bell to his collar. Nothing fancy, just something to hear him if he wandered. He sat still while I did it, didn't blink. But that night, when I was half asleep by the fire, I heard the bell ring. Not behind me, not beside me. Out, past the firelight. I sat up fast, reached for my flashlight. Copper was lying right next to me, breathing slow, eyes closed. The bell rang again. Farther this time. I didn't sleep after that. I packed up before the sky turned pale. Didn't even boil water. Just jammed what I could into my bag, tied it off, and whistled for Copper. He came, slow but steady, like nothing was wrong. His fur was damp, his breath visible. We started back the way we came. Trail still marked by the same bent pine, same low creek bed, but it felt longer. The ground was colder than before, and the fog didn't lift even as the sun came up. My flashlight kept flickering. It had worked fine yesterday. Now it dimmed and sputtered with every third step. And Copper's collar, the silver one, looked darker than before. Maybe it was just the light, maybe not. I tried not to look too closely, but I kept checking anyway. Sometimes the collar caught the light and gleamed like chrome. Sometimes it looked matte gray, almost green. Once, I swear it rippled. Not in shape, just in color, like oil floating on water. I snapped a photo on my phone, hoping to compare later. When I checked the picture, I stopped walking. Copper's head was turned, eyes clear, but where the collar should have been, there was nothing. Just smooth fur, no strap, no buckle, no shadow. The worst part, where the collar should have been, there was a shape, a dark curve connecting neck to chest, like someone had drawn over the photo with charcoal. I blinked, swiped to the next frame. Same thing. I shoved the phone in my coat and kept walking. We were close. I could feel it. I recognized the split in the rock and the tall bare tree beside it, the kind that looks like it forgot to bloom. Another 20 minutes and we'd be near the car. That was when I saw it. Off the path, down in the gully, a dog, curled beneath a blanket of wet leaves. Still, no collar I could see from above, but the fur was the same reddish gold. Same build, same back leg scar. I looked down at Copper. He was standing stiff beside me, not looking at the body. His hackles were up, but he didn't bark. I stepped off the path and moved toward the body. Leaves shifted under my boots, the kind of soft crunch that only happens in late fall. I knelt beside it, laid a hand on the shoulder. It was cold. I turned the neck gently, just enough to see the collar. Black leather, stiff, mud-caked, worn down at the buckle. But inside, on the lining, stamped letters. Copper, 2013. I looked up. My Copper was still there, still watching. I said his name, quietly. He blinked, gave a low, almost apologetic growl. Then, he turned, walked back up the ridge. Not fast, not scared, just deliberate. He never looked back. I made it to the parking lot before dark, sat in the driver's seat for over an hour, trying to make myself start the ignition. I didn't call anyone, didn't report anything. What would I say? Back home, I didn't tell my friends, didn't get another dog, but I kept the collars, 3 of them, in a drawer no one touches. Black, silver, and one I found days later, red, rough like goat hide, sitting in the bottom of my pack, though I never put it there. No tags, no stitching, just the weight of it in my palm. And sometimes, when the weather turns, I hear it. A soft jingle, not loud, not playful, just one clear bell, swaying from a collar no longer there. We hadn't been all together in 3 years. The kind of gap you don't notice until someone pulls up an old photo and you start naming who's missing. Micah, Jonah, Bree, and me. Dylan. College friends. One time every year campers. Then life happened. Jobs, relocations, 2 breakups, 1 barely survived group chat. This trip wasn't my idea, but I wanted it. 3 nights in the Appalachian woods, just like we used to. No cell service, no work schedules, just us and the trees. We even camped at the same old marker, a warped, spiraled oak we had named the cinnamon tree back in 2017. I brought my recorder. Same one I used to use for an old podcast that fizzled after 10 episodes. I figured I'd grab some audio on the first night. Campfire sounds, forest breeze, a bit of us laughing, and cut a fake intro for nostalgia. I told them it'd be funny. Something to prove we were still us. That first night was quiet. Fog drifted low to the ground, and the fire hissed more than it crackled. Copper light on damp logs. Jonah snored. Bree passed around a flask that smelled like cinnamon. Micah tried to throw a marshmallow in the fire and missed. When I unpacked the recorder, it still had juice. I hadn't hit record yet, just toggled it on to check the battery. But when I scrolled through the waveform, there was already audio. About 3 seconds. A small spike. And then, clear as anything, someone laughed. Bree leaned over my shoulder. "Could be static," she said. Micah asked if I'd left it running in my bag on the drive up. I hadn't. I deleted the file. Figured it was old junk. Didn't mention that the laugh had a sharpness to it, like it was too close to the mic. We cooked sausage over wet wood. Told stories we had all heard before. Bree and Jonah got into it about whether we had ever actually hiked the right trail that one year. I kept the recorder nearby, still off, just in case. Later that night, after everyone crashed, I set it to record, placed it on a rock just outside the tent. I wanted to catch the sounds of the woods at night. Wind, maybe an owl, something simple to listen to later and remember that we really came back. The next morning, I played the file. Nothing at first. A few minutes of fire crackle. Some shifting fabric as someone turned in their sleeping bag. Then, around minute 3, a voice. One voice. Then another. Each name spoken. Slowly. Micah. Jonah. Bree. Dylan. I paused it. Played it again. It wasn't any of us. The tone was off. Too steady. Too flat. Like someone reading a list out loud for the 2nd or 3rd time. Micah heard it too. He laughed. A little too fast. Maybe we used to have 5 people in the group and forgot one. Over mentions. No one responded. Not really. Not in a way that counted. The day passed easily. We took short hikes, made bad jokes, and argued about whether freeze-dried chili counts as food. But something about the way Bree kept glancing at the tree line stayed with me. Like she wanted to say something but didn't want to be the one to make it real. That night, Jonah volunteered to grab more wood before the 2nd round of drinks. We waited 10 minutes, then 20, then longer. Bree called for him. Micah went up the ridge. I went the other way, toward the twisted oak, holding my flashlight low. That was when I saw the recorder. It was sitting on the ground again. Turned on, battery light flashing, a new file blinking on the screen. The name of the file was Last. Disass. I picked it up. Pressed play. Jonah's voice screamed my name. Once. Then again. Dylan. Dylan. And behind it, the sound of something crashing through leaves. Fast. Close. But not echoing. Like it wasn't far enough to echo at all. I ran. Not blindly, but fast enough that my flashlight shook in my hand. The recorder thumped against my leg in my jacket pocket. I shouted Jonah's name, louder than I meant to. It didn't feel like calling for someone. It felt like trying to pull them back from something. Back at camp, Bree and Micah were both outside the tent. Bree's hands were shaking. She said they heard someone yell from the trees. Not Jonah's voice, but someone using their names. Not yelling for help, just saying the names like they were calling roll. Micah grabbed the hatchet. We didn't make a plan. just started pulling everything into packs. It started raining. Not hard, just steady enough to soak the trail and make everything slick. We decided to wait until daylight. None of us said it, but we were afraid the dark would change the forest again. I left the recorder in the middle of camp, switched it on and let it run. No one slept. Bree stayed sitting upright the whole time. Micah leaned against a tree with the hatchet balanced across his knees. I lay inside the tent with my eyes open, listening for footsteps that never came. By morning, the rain had stopped. Jonah never came back. None of us spoke about him. We just walked. It was Bree who found the old trail marker, half buried behind a fallen trunk. We followed it without discussion. No map, no questions. Everyone wanted to get back to the car. It felt like if we waited even an hour longer, the trail might not be there anymore. I carried the recorder in my hand the whole way. I didn't plan to keep the audio. I meant to erase it. All of it. As soon as we got back. But in the car, engine still cold. I tapped play on the last file, just to make sure it was nothing. The first minute was wind, leaves brushing the mic. Then, a sound. Low. Rhythmic. A laugh. Short. Breathy. Too soft to identify at first. Then it came again. Same tone. Same distance. Like someone pressing repeat. It played 3 more times. Each one smaller. Each one closer. I didn't tell Micah or Bree. I just turned it off and tucked it deep into my coat. We drove the rest of the way in silence. A week later, I opened the recorder again. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to know we hadn't imagined it. Maybe I thought I'd find some logical screw-up in the file names. But there was one I had never seen before. Micah, Bree, Dylan, JN. I didn't name it. I don't even know how it got there. The timestamp matched the night after Jonah disappeared. I hit play. It started like a conversation. I heard my own voice, laughing about something Micah said. Then Bree's voice, softer. But the timing was wrong. The words were familiar but fell out of sync, like we were reading from old lines but forgetting the rhythm. There were phrases we had not said, repeated names, mismatched questions, someone asking about the cinnamon tree 4 different times in a row. Then footsteps, clear, crunching closer. And at the very end, just before the file cut, a voice whispered, "You'll leave the recorder again, won't you?" It was Jonah. I sent the recorder to a friend who worked in audio editing. She said the memory card was blank. Nothing was on it, not even corrupt files. But now, every time I try to sleep with the lights off, I hear it. Not talking, not words, just my name, said softly from the edge of the room. I threw the recorder into the lake behind my apartment. 1 week later, a package arrived in my mailbox. No return label. Inside was a memory card, the same model mine had used. Taped to it was a note. No handwriting, just printed text. Listen to the final file. Burnout makes you crave silence in a very specific way. Not just quiet. Absence. Absence of people. Absence of pings. Absence of the feeling that something is always pulling at your time. That is why I went to Whispering Pines. I had quit my job 3 weeks earlier. Marketing lead for a regional chain. High performance. Low reward. My inbox was a landfill. I sold off my apartment lease. Stashed my stuff in storage. Packed light. Just the camping gear. Drone. GoPro. And 2 external drives. I like to keep things minimal. I do solo hikes. I talk into the camera sometimes. Sure. But only when the light's right. Not for views. Mostly for myself. It makes me feel like I'm curating my days. Not just living them. Whispering Pines is not a famous lake. Not even marked on most maps. I only found it because of a blog post from 2011. Some guy wrote a whole page about how the water never reflects what's in front of it. It sounded dramatic. Exactly what I was looking for. The first night was still. My tent was 3 feet from the shoreline. The trees curved low over the water, and I filmed the sunset while the drone hovered in place. The reflection of a dead pine snapped perfectly down the center of the lake. I even said out loud, "This is better than I thought." Later that night, I backed up the footage. GoPro files looked normal. Short clips. Ambient stuff. But one file stood out. It was timestamped 2:12 a.m. I hadn't filmed anything after sundown. When I played it, the frame opened straight on the lake. Dead center. The water was calm. Fog clung to the edges of the screen. At second 7, there was a ripple. A perfect circle spreading out, like someone had just gone under. No wind. No movement in the trees. No other sounds. But I never set the camera out. Brushed it off. Maybe I hit record by accident before zipping up the tent. Maybe it was a delay clip from an earlier session. I deleted the file and told myself not to dramatize what was probably a minor sync error. The next day I flew the drone over the north side of the lake. Same angles, same sweep. I ran it twice for a longer time lapse. When I checked the footage later that night, one of the files repeated a 3-second sequence halfway through. Not a glitch, just a loop, right where the drone passed over a submerged stump. I tried moving camp farther uphill, packed everything before sundown, even rolled the tent tight and set up new stakes near a ridge. But the GoPro made another clip. Same frame, facing the lake, no wind, no audio. Then I noticed the file name, ME0001. I don't name my files. The GoPro uses timestamp auto format. There should not have been a custom label. Next morning, new file, ME0002. Then another, ME0003. By the fourth night, I stopped deleting them. I watched ME, 4 inches silence. The camera was positioned inches from the shoreline, half submerged. Not a placement I would have risked. In the center of the frame, a pale spot beneath the surface. It didn't move, didn't drift, just hovered there, fixed, like an eye. I packed everything that morning, left the tent poles sticking out of the dirt like snapped legs. I didn't care about order or weight distribution, just stuffed gear into the pack and started walking. The trail was muddy and unfamiliar. My GPS showed a static dot. No movement, no signal. I tried refreshing, tried using the compass app, but the screen kept freezing on the same directionless grid. I turned the GoPro on, planning to record my steps so I could reverse them later. But the footage came out white. Not overexposed, not blurred, just a soft, dense white screen, like fog recorded from the inside. I switched to the drone, manual control. I sent it upward, then forward, toward what I thought was the tree line we had come through. But within 30 seconds, the live feed turned, slowly, deliberately, back toward the lake. No matter how I adjusted the stick, the drone circled back, hovering. Watching the water, I landed it by force, pulled the battery, sat down on a stone and told myself, "You are still the one holding the remote, still the one in charge." That night, I didn't record anything. No cameras, no audio. I left the gear zipped and powered down. But in the morning, the drone's SD card had a new file. Aerial view. From above the camp, timestamp 33 a.m. In the frame, me, sleeping in my tent. Outside the tent, something upright. Still, a shape with no face. Its edges blurred by fog, and no reflection in the lake behind it. I stopped trying to leave after that. I sat by the water with the drone beside me. Dead. GoPro in my hand. The last file I had watched was ME0004. By now I had ME0008. I opened the folders, watched them all in order. Each file, same lake, same composition. But in each one, the pale shape beneath the surface was closer. by ME 0006. It was almost at the edge of the shore. In me 0007. It rose. Not fast, not with sound, just appeared closer to the surface until I could make out the outline of a head. No hair, no shadow, no wake. I felt like I should have screamed, but I didn't, because deep down, some part of me was already watching. Me 0008 opened with the lens turned inward. My own face filled the frame. Expressionless, no reaction, eyes wide and unfocused. Behind me, just out of focus, the same pale figure, standing, still, but its shape was wrong, too tall, too narrow, and the water behind it was perfectly smooth. No reflection. I never posted the trip, never uploaded a clip. I came home with everything intact, except the sense that I had really come back at all. The files. I still have them. I tried wiping the drives, did a full reset, zero pass. But every time I check the folder, there is one more. Me 0031. Me 0032. Me 0033. The last one I watched opened in my bedroom. Camera was still perched on the nightstand. A slow shot of me asleep. In the background, soft dripping sounds. But I don't have pipes. No leaks. No water. And when I checked the lens, it was dry. That one hit a little different. If these stories mean something to you, leave a like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who'd stay up to hear it too. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, my email's in the description. Now, story 6. I told Riley the trail wasn't dangerous, just overgrown. I had found it on an old topo map buried in our station archive, a route scribbled in pencil that curved west off a decommissioned ridge. No recorded hazards, no known wildlife issues, and it ended with a scenic overlook no one had posted about online. Exactly what we both needed. He didn't argue. Not really. He had been out of work for 2 months. Layoffs at the plant. His shoulders had started to slope inward like he was trying to disappear. When I suggested a 3-day hike, he just nodded and said, "Sure. Yeah, that sounds good." The fog was already thick when we started. By the second hour, it had climbed from the tree line and sat heavy around our knees. I led with the old map folded in my coat pocket. Riley held a handheld GPS unit like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. We reached the ridge around mid-afternoon. That was when we saw the rock. It sat a few feet off the trail, waist height, flat on top with a distinct Y-shaped crack cutting down the middle. Riley ran a hand across the split and took a picture, saying something like, "Good landmark." We laughed about how we always end up finding weird rocks. 2 hours later, we made camp in a clearing uphill. It wasn't until I walked to the edge of the site to collect firewood that I saw it again. Same rock, same height, same Y-shaped crack. This time, it was only a few steps from our tent. I called Riley over. He squatted next to it, looked at the photo from earlier, then back at the rock. "You sure we didn't circle back? 8 CS. We didn't." I felt certain, not just by direction, but by slope, by vegetation. This trail's linear. If anything, we should have gone forward. IMC. He didn't argue, just took another picture. This one, we didn't laugh about. That night, the fog pressed closer than usual. It crawled between the tent flaps. My breath felt wet even when I wasn't moving. Riley didn't speak much after dinner, just stared at the GPS screen like he expected it to flicker to life and give us some new answer. The next morning, it was worse. The trail vanished within 10 steps, swallowed by white. Riley muttered about signal error. I offered to lead again, guessing by terrain. Everything around us felt vaguely familiar. Trees that looked copied, roots we had already stepped over. a slope that leaned wrong but still led upward. When the Y-marked rock appeared again, we didn't speak for a while. It was standing in a clearing of damp needles, perfectly centered. Riley turned on me. "You brought us in here. You and that ripped-up map. Damn you. Damn you." I didn't snap back. Not really. I just said what I had been thinking all morning, that the terrain might be spiral-shaped, a geological formation that doubles on itself. He didn't buy it. He pulled his jacket tight and walked past me. That night, we barely spoke. He slept with the GPS in his jacket pocket. I traced the map by lantern light, trying to see what I had missed. By dawn, his GPS was gone. I found the map crumpled outside the tent. One corner had been torn off. The missing edge was damp, even though it hadn't rained. I followed no trail that day. Just picked a direction and walked. Every hour I changed course. I avoided slopes, avoided creeks, stayed within the trees. But eventually, I saw it again. The Y-split rock. And this time, something was carved across the top. R+A, scratched deep, fresh. I had not carved it. That was when I heard my name. Soft, echoed. From the opposite direction I had just come. I ran toward the voice. It came clear at first. Riley's voice. Just my name. Soft but urgent. I slipped once. Nearly went down a slope, but caught myself on a branch thick with moss. I kept calling his name back, even when the fog made it feel like I was shouting into a tunnel. When I found him, he was standing still, back turned, not moving. "Riley," I said. No answer. I reached out, touched his shoulder. The shape shifted under my hand, like cloth with no weight. The figure collapsed in on itself, dropped sideways like a mannequin with the spine pulled out. When it hit the ground, it didn't make a sound. I backed away, did not scream, just turned and ran until my lungs hurt. By dusk, I reached a ledge that sloped out to a wide view. The fog dipped below me for the first time in 2 days. Far off, I could see the curve of the valley and a thread of a trail running north. For the first time since this started, I felt something like control. I pitched the tent carefully, ate slow, wrote nothing in my journal but the date. When I opened my pack to take out my water bottle, the map was there. Whole. No torn edge. No water stain. Folded clean like I had packed it that morning. On the back corner, in a new hand, someone else's, neat and thin, was a sketch of the Y-shaped rock. Beneath it, Day 3. The next morning, I opened my eyes to sunlight. Real sun? The color I hadn't seen in days. I unzipped the tent and looked out. The Y-marked rock was 10 feet from me, exactly where it had been on the first day. Same angle, same split, same moss on the left side, where Riley had touched it. Then I heard the footsteps, coming through the trees, slow, familiar. Riley stepped into view, hair damp, eyes soft, calm like nothing had happened. "I think we should try that trail," he said. "The one from the map. Dever we texts for more C's if I am in." I stood up too fast. "No," I tried to say. "We already," but nothing came out. My mouth moved, but no sound followed, not even breath. My hands were shaking. I looked down. On the back of my left hand, something was etching itself. 2 letters. Sharp. Slow. R+A. I had not carved it, but it was there. 1 month later, they found me walking alone near the edge of a trailhead, 15 miles from where I was supposed to be. No signs of injury. No ID. I gave my name, but couldn't remember how many days I had been gone. They asked about Riley. I said his name once and started crying. I didn't know why. I don't go hiking anymore. I don't even walk far from my porch. But sometimes, in dreams, I see the fog lifting, and he's there again, standing just ahead of me, like he never left, always facing forward, never turning around. I was never a superstitious driver. You can't be, when you've spent 18 years chasing lines of asphalt through every hour the night can offer. You get tired, you get lucky. You get pulled over for speeding in Ohio twice in the same week. You don't get haunted. You just get worn out. That said, I do believe in stopping before you brake. Last fall, I parked my career early. Sleep had stopped making sense. Some weird version of insomnia where you don't feel tired. Just off sync. Like your body's a second behind your brain. I cashed out a decent buyout and bought a used Sprinter van with a folding cot and enough space to pretend I was living slower. I started heading south from Pennsylvania. Alone. No destination but warmth. Somewhere past midnight, near the West Virginia line. I lost power steering for a second. No big deal. Just a sputter. But it made the dash flicker. I pulled over near an old rail crossing. And that was when I saw it. The clear, hollow depot. It looked like something from an oil painting. Sloped roof. Half the siding missing. Vines crawling over the ticket window. There was no sound. No motion. Just a single yellow bulb glowing under the wooden awning. I assumed solar. Maybe some old-timer rigged it up for nostalgia. The van wasn't going anywhere fast. So I figured one night wouldn't hurt. I set up inside the depot itself, right on the old bench by the wall. Stretched out my legs. It felt still. The kind of still that makes your ears ring after too many hours on the road. Around 2 a.m., I looked at the digital clock clipped to the inside of the van door. 2:11. I glanced at the depot entrance. The bulb was flickering now. Not fast. Just one soft pulse every few seconds. 2:13. It steadied. Stayed on. Bright enough to cast a shadow across the empty rails. The next morning, I laughed about it, told myself I was overreading things. It was just a motion sensor, or something faulty in the bulb. Still, when I checked the time again that night, waiting for it, I admit, the light blinked on at exactly 2:13 a.m. Not 2:12, not 2:14, exactly 2:13. It kept happening. By the third night, I moved my cot closer to the window. That was the night I heard the humming. Not music exactly. Not words. It was like someone half remembering a lullaby. No rhythm. Just tone. I stepped out with a flashlight. The light above the depot door stayed solid. The tracks were empty. No breeze. No insects. Just the low sound of someone maybe 5 feet away, humming with their mouth closed. The next morning, there was a jacket hanging from a rusted nail inside the station. I hadn't noticed it before. Army green. Dusty but dry. In the breast pocket, I found an old paper ticket. Clear Hollow to Black Ridge, November 1963. Passenger name, B. Black. I sat with that a while. Same last name. Probably nothing. Still folded the ticket carefully and put it back. That night, the light blinked again. 2:13 on the dot. And the humming returned. Closer. I stayed awake the fourth night. Didn't move. Didn't speak. I just sat on the cot with the curtains cracked, watching the bulb. At 2:13, it came on. Right on schedule. But this time, something else changed. The light didn't flicker. It surged, sharp enough to cast a long shadow straight across the rails. And at the end of that beam, something was standing, not moving, facing away. The figure wore the same military jacket I had found. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Cold gravel underfoot. I called out, "Hey, you okay?" The figure nodded once, still not turning. Then the light went out. Darkness swallowed the shape completely. I stood there for a long minute, holding the flashlight but not turning it on. The next morning, I checked the dash cam. No motion. No light. No figure. The recordings jumped straight from 212 to 214. Like something edited itself out. I drove into town to buy tools. Stopped at a small grocery and asked the clerk if they knew anything about the depot. Clear hollow, he said. That place was torn down in '03. Today, I told him I had camped there. He just stared at me. Said nothing. Another man older, maybe in his 80s, leaned from the back and asked without looking up, "It's sing yet?" Making. When eyes, I said. What? A closed. All that, he repeated. If it's singing, it ain't ready to keep you yet. The actual. Tooting to a 7. I left without the wrench I came for. The next morning, the van started like new. Sky was pale blue. Birdsong actually made it through the trees for the first time in days. I got out fast. Followed the road until I reached the junction at 26B. Everything felt sharper. Real again? I stopped for gas near a highway merge. Paid in cash. Chatted with the clerk about nothing. But when he asked where I came from, I mentioned the route. His face dropped. That old station's not there anymore, he said. You sure you didn't stop somewhere else? 87. I didn't answer. That night, I parked at a rest stop near a lake. Peaceful spot. Clear water. No wind. I set the tent just beyond the shoreline and settled in. I wasn't even thinking about the time. Until I rolled over. Clock said 2:12. At 2:13, a warm yellow glow appeared across the lake. Not the moon. Not another camper. It was that same light. Perfect hue. Same strength. Fixed on one spot like a beam had broken through the trees. And then came the humming. Right behind my tent. I froze. Didn't breathe. Then I stepped out. Nothing there. But in the toe of my left boot, neatly tucked inside, was another train ticket. Same paper. Same yellowed edge. This time it read, Noah Black, No 14. 2025. Now I don't camp anymore. But I still see the light. Sometimes in the side mirror when I park late, sometimes from a motel window at exactly 2:13. Just for a second. The humming keeps getting closer. I haven't heard it say anything yet. But last week, my headlights went dead on a back road. And when I reached to check the fuse, the army jacket was folded clean across my back seat. I didn't go into the mountains to prove anything. But if someone thought I did, I wasn't going to correct them. After everything that happened, after the hearing, after the emails, after they reassigned me for speaking up, I needed space. Not a vacation. Not comfort. Just a place with sky and stone and air that didn't ask questions. So I picked Hawks Hollow, a narrow trail climbing west across shale slopes and pine windbreaks. Steep enough to clear my head. Most hikers skip it. No ranger tower. No water source. The view, though, is supposed to be worth it. I brought a new pack. 30-liter frame, full strap system, cinch ties, and a back pull lock for heavier gear. My hands liked the weight of it, like wearing your own anchor. The trailhead was marked with a single orange tag. I passed it mid-morning and didn't look back. Around noon, I took a short break beneath a bluff. The wind had started to shift, colder than forecasted. I drank, stretched, checked my gear. And that was when I noticed it. The back zipper, the main compartment, was wide open. My camp tools had spilled out behind me like a breadcrumb trail. I knew I had locked it. I always lock it. Double pull, both tabs to the side. But now it was fully open. Nothing torn. Just unzipped. Clean. Maybe I snagged it on the rock. Maybe the bouncing worked it loose. I gathered the gear and told myself to clip the pulls together this time. No room for doubt. The wind picked up in bursts that afternoon. I had to brace on the steeper curves. The hollow narrowed the higher I went, funneling the cold into my jacket sleeves and down my neck. I found a shelf wide enough to pitch camp just before the ridge turned west. It was too close to the edge, but I was too tired to keep moving. That night, the wind howled. Not a whistle. A real pull. The kind that tugged on the tent walls and made the guy lines quiver. I reinforced them twice. Used every anchor I had. My hands stung from the cold, but I felt sure I'd done it right. Just before I fell asleep, I heard something. Click. Like a zipper shifting. Just once. I told myself it was wind against the tent flap. In the morning, the tarp was gone. Blown off or stolen. I couldn't say. My food pouch was open. Contents scattered, but no tracks in the dirt except mine. No claw marks. No boot prints. Just me. I packed quickly. I should have turned back. But I didn't. I wasn't going to give the trail the satisfaction. By mid-afternoon, the gusts were sharper. Rocks clattered down the ridge without warning. One hit my shin hard enough to knock me off balance. I fell sideways into the brush, caught myself before sliding. My left leg throbbed, not broken, but already swelling. My pack had rolled a few feet ahead. I dragged it back, reached for the top. The zipper was open, again, and not just open, pulled the opposite way, away from where I had fastened it. This time I said it aloud. This is not the wind. Two I sees. I tore an extra bandana into strips and wrapped my leg tight. Not a full splint, just enough to keep the swelling down. Every step after that felt like dragging a frozen rope. I leaned into the pain, told myself I had walked out of worse. But I couldn't go back the way I came. The wind along that ridge was different now. It didn't gust. It sliced. One wrong shift and I'd be off my feet again. So I headed south, down through a narrow cut between two ridges, the kind of terrain that makes you crawl more than walk. The farther I went, the more the wind sounded like it was moving with me. Not from one direction, from behind, following. About an hour in, the pack jerked. I felt it. Not weight shift, not balance loss. It pulled, just once. I spun around. The bottom latch had caught on something. A root. Thin, twisted, curved exactly through the loop of the back strap. Not random, not natural. I reached to free it and had to unwind the hook carefully. The root had threaded itself like a hand reaching through the gap. I left it behind, slung the pack over one shoulder and kept moving. By the time I reached the plateau, I was shaking. The slope curved flat for maybe 20 feet before the next drop. Loose stone, shallow grip, but I needed to cross it to reach the next ridge. I stepped forward, slowly. Left foot, then right. The pack shifted again. I adjusted. Then the weight jerked. Hard. I slipped. My feet came out from under me, and the ridge vanished. Wind screamed in my ears. Rocks blurred by. I hit the ledge below flat on my back. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I sat up. Everything ached. The pack was half off, one arm free. I stood, just as the ledge cracked under my heel. I flung forward, caught a root with both hands. Grit tore my palms. My arms locked, legs swung free. Then I heard it, a zipper. Not from behind. From me. From the jacket I was wearing. Click. Click. I looked down. The chest pocket was moving. Something was working the tab up. Careful. Slow. I screamed and ripped the jacket off. Let it fall. Watched it vanish over the edge. Then I pulled myself up. I made it back to the ranger post 3 days later. Someone found me on the lower trail, limping. I gave them my name, told them where I had fallen. I didn't mention the jacket. Didn't say a word about the zippers or the pulling. All I said was this: I needed to keep going. That's enough. End quote. Now I only carry gear that ties or snaps. No zippers. No clips. and I never camped near ledges. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.